It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with Florence Villeneuve. Hi, Flo. We have to focus, of course, on Notre-Dame. Notre-Dame, most of Paris, France, and much of the world still reeling from that devastating fire that spread through the wooden attic of the 850-year-old cathedral and toppling its 300-foot spire.
And the image of that spiral falling really will go down in history as the image of that devastating fire. Now, it really took the city off guard, and it started out as a wonderful spring day here in the capital, and then all of a sudden the news broke that Notre-Dame was on fire. Now, Notre-Dame really is the symbol of eternal Paris, and so immediately Parisians, but also tourists, Catholics, non-believers came together to witness this apocalyptic moment and accompany Notre-Dame through this turn of events, sometimes in stunned silence, sometimes singing very softly.
It's happening right now. It's horrible. Everyone is waiting, kind of in reverence. We're watching 800 years of history go up in smoke.
It's the heart of Paris, so it's kind of our heart as well.
You think it's indestructible, and then one day it happens.
We feel powerless, so we're watching in desperation.
Notre-Dame, of course, that Gothic architectural masterpiece, such an important symbol here in France, but also very important to so many people abroad, made famous, really, by Victor Hugo's book, The Hunchback of Notre-Dame, and it's also part of UNESCO's World Heritage.
Now, each year, some 13 million people visit Notre-Dame, which makes it the most visited monument in France, but also in Europe. Now, it's an important religious symbol, of course, but it's much more than just a cathedral or a tourist attraction. First of all, it's point zero. Now, it's the point from which all distances are measured in France, but also Notre-Dame holds a really special place in the heart of secular France, which might seem ironic because it is a cathedral, but she's kind of seen as a protective ancestor, a reassuring grandmother, if you will, who's always been there and it seemed would always be there, but that was, of course, made very fragile.
It's a loss. It's worse than mourning someone because it's the soul of Paris, first of all, but Catholics too.
Other cathedrals are important, but the Paris Cathedral is France, it's our heart. And that's important. And it's not just a religious symbolism, it's general.
Of course, there was immeasurable relief that no lives were lost in the fire of Notre-Dame, but there is still this feeling that some of the beauty, some of the grandeur of France went up in flames that day. And after all, you really can't disassociate Notre-Dame from the history of France.
Well, because in her over 850-year history, Notre-Dame has really seen it all, whether it's royal marriages, looting during the Revolution, of course, the coronation of Napoleon, 2 world wars, the Nazi occupation. In fact, during the Nazi occupation, the bells stopped ringing, and it was at Notre-Dame that General Charles de Gaulle celebrated the liberation of Paris, and it's also there that his funeral took place. Now, more recently, there was a memorial for the victims of the November 2015 attacks, and in a way, that recent history is why it was so upsetting to see Notre-Dame in flames, because, Paris has really been rocked by these terrorist attacks in recent years, and through it all, there was one reassuring thing, is that the monuments were always there. They seemed indestructible. Notre-Dame survived it all, so could we, and so seeing her in flames was all the more heartbreaking.
Now, despite all the destruction, things really could have been a lot worse. And if they weren't, it was really only thanks to the 400 firefighters, les pompiers de Paris, who were able to save the structure of Notre-Dame, as well as many of its treasures and relics.
And some of that is down to pure luck. For instance, the 16 copper statues that you can see right here on the roof were removed for restoration just a few days before the fire broke out. Now, people were also cheered to learn that despite the raging fire and temperatures, crosses were saved, as well as this crown of thorns, the great organ, the famous rose windows also survived the flames. Now, other works of art and relics were dragged out by the police while the cathedral was burning. Let's listen to the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. She'll describe the rescue operation. It's really a race against the clock that's straight out of a movie.
There was a human chain in the sense that everyone stepped in.
City Hall found a truck and freed up this space to store everything. We kept guard and found a safe for the most precious objects.
Now, the million-dollar question, or even the billion-dollar question, quite literally, is restoration. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, has vowed to rebuild Notre-Dame in 5 years, but many experts say it could take between 10 to even 15 years to bring Notre-Dame back to its original glory.
And one of the big questions is, should it be rebuilt exactly the way it was? Purists say yes, but others say that's simply impossible. And that actually leads us to our word du jour, which is the French word for spire, which is flèche, because the 93-meter lead-clad wooden spire that collapsed it was actually built in 1859, so not that long ago. Now, the Prime Minister, Édouard Philippe, has announced that France is actually launching an international architecture competition to redesign the roof and the flèche and the spire, and he says it should be adapted to techniques and challenges of our era.
And then, of course, there's the cost of all of the repairs for Notre-Dame. Millions of euros in donations already flew in from around the world before the fire was even put out.
Well, within 48 hours, nearly €1 billion were donated. So that should be definitely enough to cover the repairs and put a smile back on the gargoyles' faces. Now, pledges were made from individuals, but also major companies and very wealthy families. It must be said there's a little bit of controversy here because those who give benefit from very generous tax returns. And then others point out that there are greater causes, perhaps, than just rebuilding a cathedral, say poverty or climate change. Anyway, if you do want to make a donation, do be careful because there are some scams out there. I recommend this official foundation, which is called the Fondation du Patrimoine, and you can see it has a page here in English. So the cathedral will be rebuilt, and in the meantime, its charred structure is kind of a symbol of resilience, of Paris's resilience. And in times like these, people like to quote Paris's Latin motto, which is fluctuat nec mergitur, tossed but not sunk.
Florence, thank you so much for that. Florence Villeminot with that look at Notre-Dame Cathedral in the wake of that devastating fire in this French Connections. Don't forget, if you have other questions for Flo about France or the French, you can always send her a tweet at Flo Villeminot.